Okay, so hi, my name is Dan, and I am a resident at Green Hills, right here in West Liberty. And my wife, Patty, and I, we have been here at Green Hills for 10 years, and we always had a good time here, very well received and very well taken care of. And while being here, we became friends. I became friends with many of the veterans of the veterans New Jersey, West Liberty veterans, and in particular John Smith, and who was our neighbor at assisted living. And John and I went to the last veteran meeting or celebration last year at the Quest Church for the Purple Heart recipients, of which he is. And so there's a connection here between West Liberty, Green Hills, and the veterans of this area. And so it's a pleasure for me to do a testimonial of the reason why I'm here and how grateful I am to be alive right here, thanks to the GIs who indirectly saved my life in 1942. And so this is why I'm here, to tell you that story. And so here we go. So eventually what you have to, just to put back into the picture of what happened for the Second World War. The Second World War started in 1940 when France was totally defeated by the German army in just 2 weeks, and it just collapsed. And it was a big collapse and the whole thing. And so my folks and I were living in North Africa, specifically in the country of Algeria. And so at that time, we were under the domination of the Nazi system. And from 1942 to 1940, from 1940 to 42, the whole country had a very terrible time in terms of, because the Germans were making France pay for tributes and had to pay for their losses. And so the Germans were stealing all the food, all the supplies, all the coal, everything was taken away from the French citizens. And so we had a miserable time, and as a result, there was kind of a chaos through the whole government, and no hospital supplies and everything, and no hygienic controls and whatnot through the population. And because of that, there was famines going on. There were very nasty diseases, epidemics of cholera, epidemics of typhus, typhoid, you name it, we had it. And in particular, what I got diphtheria, or diphtheria. And so I got diphtheria just before the German forces were confronted by the American coming from both England and the States. And all of a sudden, the American army just popped up off the coast of North Africa. Nobody knew about it, not even the Germans. But there were 300 troops, transport, and 200 Navy ships. And they just arrived all of a sudden, and the citizens and the government did not know anything, really, not even the French army. And so by that moment, I was already sick with diphtheria. And so from a historical point of view, there was a huge landing. It was the largest amphibian landing that ever was. And the American forces arrived and landed, and they encountered not so strong opposition, but nonetheless about 1,000 men died during 1 week of combat on the beaches and in the cities, in the harbors, mostly in the harbors. And so this was a very, very difficult situation, militarily speaking, because at that time, General Eisenhower was in charge of the operation, and they expected that the French would not resist. And strange as it seemed to be, the French at that time had kind of capitulated, and there was a government led by Maréchal Pétain, and the French army had kind of laid their arms down, and the government kind of gave up. So, as it turns out, that Pétain became pro-German. So, in ways that eventually he was judged for having done bad things. But when we were concerned, we had the Americans coming, and kind of a small French bunch of soldiers who fought back, and as I said, 500 of our boys died there. And so over the years, I came to realize, as I was getting myself older, that I was saved by those guys who then were 18 years old, not 20 years old, 25, and they died, and I lived thanks to them. And here's how it was. So I told you before that I had this diphtheria situation. So there was no hospitals of any kind, and so somebody gave me, doctor gave me a shot kind of for the diphtheria, and the shot was dirty or something, and I got gangrene of my left leg. It was so bad, and so this was before the Americans arrived, just before, a few days. The doctor told my dad that I either had to have my leg cut off, or I had to let me die. because they had no way to make me survive. And so I was going to be gone. And so my dad went home and asked my mommy, and she said, no way, let him die. And but I was going to be gone. So you have to know that we were living in a kind of a frontier town, if you want, and in kind of southern Algeria, the town called Sidi Belabès, which was the headquarters of the Foreign Legion. And right at that moment, at the same time, if you want, as the American army was fighting the Foreign Legion to land in North Africa, the doctor was telling me, okay, let's get rid of this kid. So, as it turns out, my granddad was a judge in the town of Oran, which is on us by the ocean, by the seashore. And he, as the Americans came and became kind of in a few days while the fighting was going on, my grandfather talked to a American doctor, American Army doctor, and told him about my condition. And so the American doctor just handed the pack of penicillin. And he gave him the penicillin, and my dad went to get it, gave it to my doctor, if you want, and they gave me the shot of the penicillin in such a way that my gangrene that was going to kick me out, the gangrene stopped, and I was saved just in a few days, but thanks to American Army who came to save me. So they did not know that I was saved, but I know where I was. And so that's my story. And so since then, I've been always so grateful for being alive, but this comes in the context of what happened when the Americans came. So, as you know, as I told you before, the French government, it was a puppet regime. They were good French, but they were leaning towards Germany. And they did not know what to do, really. And so when the American forces arrived, it was a complete change in the atmosphere of the life in the country, because we had very little food, no milk in particular, no milk, no clothes, no thread. I remember my mom, we had a big tablecloth, and the tablecloth was made of thick enough threads, and she would take the threads off to sew our clothes. So we had very, very tough. And when the Americans came, all of a sudden there was a glorious time of plenty, with food and everything. And one of the things which was in my mind very deeply ingrained is when we had at my school. I'm at school, so therefore I was 9. I was sort of maybe 3rd grade or something like this. What is 3rd grade? And so when I recovered and everything, so the Americans would bring the kids, powdered milk. So when you talk about powdered milk here, like when I was giving John powdered milk or something, it was called, oh, blah. But to my taste, the powdered milk that we were receiving from the Americans coming to our school for breakfast, that was so delicious. And we had empty cans, soup cans, or perhaps some carnation milk cans, empty cans that were used. So we would go and have our cans filled with powdered milk, and it was so foamy and so sweet. It was in my taste. As often as I can, I drink powdered milk just to remember what it was. And so all of this, thanks to the arrival of the American Army, and so I'm so grateful for their giving their life to save they were not trying to save their country, because America was not in danger right that moment, but they were coming to save the world because of trying to bring democracy, bring free trade, and bring happiness amongst people of other countries. And I find this is so touching that those kids, some of them volunteers, some of them cheated about their own age because they were too young, but still they went to fight a system called Nazism, and they really didn't have to, but the whole country came to a decision for the sake of democracy, for the sake of happiness among the people of the world. And so to me personally, it meant so much that I was alive thanks to them. And so that's what I came to here tell you about.